Franchising is the most misunderstood and most overlooked form of entrepreneurship. We're here to educate you and help you find the entrepreneur within. Franchising is not all about the French fries.
We find that individuals who are exploring business ownership tend to have a lot of misperceptions and misunderstandings about the franchise industry. So what we want to do is help prospective business owners make confident and educated decisions before moving forward or not moving forward with a business. Welcome to Unpredicted Entrepreneur.
Hi, welcome to episode 95 of Unpredicted Entrepreneur. I'm Roxanne Rapske, and this is my co-host, Sara Waskow. We created this podcast to bring you education and information about business ownership and all things franchising. Our guests today are here to share their story of coming into business ownership. They are Greg Lynch and Gayle Goodman Lynch, and they are the owners of It's a Good Sign. Welcome.
Welcome. Yes, we're so excited.
Thank you very much.
We're happy to be here.
We appreciate you joining us and taking time out of your very busy day. I know getting a business up and running and that first year's rough. So we appreciate you coming to tell your story. So let's start with your background. When we first started working together, this business was more for Greg, and you were kind of just supporting him, and you guys ended up doing something together. So let's kind of go all the way back, hear your backgrounds, and then we'll get into how you ended up picking this business.
Okay. Would you like to start first, or would you like me to?
I will let you go first, Aaron.
Very well. I came out of college, went into journalism, did that for a while, ended up running a weekly newspaper in a suburb of Dallas. After I sold that, I went into communications and public relations and a little bit of marketing. I worked for a couple of different companies. I worked for a couple of different consultancies. And after that, I ended up deciding I really needed a change of pace. I became bored with communications. So I became a PI. And I did that for a few years.
Okay, stop. That was a private investigator. Went from journalism to private investigating. I think that's very interesting.
That's basically the same kind of work. It's just you don't tell everyone about it.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
But I did that for a while. Unfortunately, it's not like it is in the movies and TV. It tends to be a lot more boring and a lot more grueling when you're doing a stakeout in the back of a car in Dallas in August for 8 hours. You begin to seriously consider your life choices. So
we moved on past that.
Yes. So I went back into communications, and I did that for a while longer. Until the job that I was in, I got laid off. Then I went into a whole different career again, working in the mortgage industry. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And then I decided that was enough of that. And we started looking for a new opportunity. I was looking at different jobs. Was having a little bit of trouble getting a good interview or getting a good position. And Gayle pointed out that I'd always been a terrible employee anyway, but had run my own business before at the newspaper and at the BI agency. Uh-huh. So we started thinking about how we could do that, and we ended up being introduced to someone who did franchise consultancy, and that was not a good fit. But Roxanne was. And so that's how we ended up where we are today, sitting here with you.
And you found me through a really good friend of yours that you knew through journalism, right?
Yes.
Who actually does, he writes for us. He does some blogging.
He does our blogs.
Some of your blogs.
Yeah, he does our newsletters. Yeah.
Yep.
He's our mystery ghostwriter, I guess, because he's behind the scenes, but he does our blogs.
Yeah.
But I think it is important that you pointed out, like having run your own business and having been an employee, that was kind of a decision you had to make there. Do I want to go back and stay employed? And I think it's hard to be an employee. Roxanne and I kind of joke after you've run your own business,
Yes.
we kind of joke that we're unemployable because when you've been making all your own decisions and then somebody else is making them for you, it's a big adjustment.
Absolutely.
It is. And I think it's interesting too, because there's pros and cons to owning a business and there's pros and cons to working for someone else. And you had experienced both of those and chose to go back to the pros and cons of business ownership.
Right. From time to time, yes, it would be really nice to just work my 40 hours and get my paycheck.
Right.
But overall, I think I'm probably better suited where I am.
Yeah.
So tell us where you are. Tell us about your business and
Absolutely.
kind of how you came to choose this opportunity.
We looked at a number of different opportunities, and they were very different. And we had a list of things that we wanted out of a business.
Yeah.
And ended up with Sign World checking the most boxes. So we did a deeper dive into it, found out more about the opportunity, more about the system, and decided that was going to be our play. So it's been basically almost a year to the day, a couple of weeks ago, since we signed with Sign World. It's been since we never had a official opening day. We just started kind of doing work.
Yeah.
But we'll say that was September.
Okay. I remember being at your building when you'd first moved in. And then, I think as you guys went through this process, it became clear as well that I think the reason this was a good fit is you could both do it together. I think you like the business to business side of it as well.
Right.
But give us just kind of give us your background and how this kind of all fit in for you as well as Greg.
Yeah, I'm a self-described entrepreneurial evangelist because I am always going around telling people they should start their own business because I've been in business for myself for 17 years and it's the best job I've ever had. It's at times been the worst job I've ever had, but I would not trade it in for a regular job. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. And, Greg kind of went in and out of corporate for a few years there. And one of the reasons I told him he is the worst employee is because he's really a business owner, at the end of the day. And when you're married to somebody, it's hard to coach a person that you're married to because your perspective is not the same as someone who's outside of the relationship. But when we really talked about it, he was kind of all in on it. And then when we worked with you, what was interesting is what you mentioned, this was supposed to be his business solely to begin with, because I was already running my own business. So I didn't need another business really. But we got really invested in Sign World because we liked the opportunity. It had sort of that marketing connection too, which is what I've done for 17 years, that, marketing, communications and coaching. And your process, the FranNet process, is what we loved about it most, was that it did more of that executive overview, like what is your executive style? How do you work? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? And through that process, realized that we complement each other remarkably well as business partners. But when we got married, if you had asked us we'd ever start a business together, we would have said, heck no, that is never going to happen. But now you guess you have to say never say never.
Here you are.
Here we are. But it runs well because I manage my part of the business. He manages his part of the business. And we come together to a common goal. And that's what makes it work.
So tell us a little bit about Sign World, what you do, why you picked it.
Well, it was it's hard to say this, but there seemed like there was a low proficiency barrier to entry. Now there's a million things there are to learn about signs.
As we're learning.
And yes, and I still don't know many of them, but it was something that you could pick up and get started with and learn on the go, which was one of the things that, I liked about it. And it seemed like there was a significant opportunity for success, for growth, for financial reward out of it, which is really what we were looking for. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I can find personal fulfillment anywhere, but I want money too. So.
Right. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, and when you talk about scaling a business like Signs, for example, you don't have to open another location in order to grow.
Correct.
So you can continue to manufacture different types of signs. And then there's one thing that I'd like for you to share is just about, you said there's a million things to learn about signs. There's a ton of different pieces of equipment. You could invest a lot of money, but you have an opportunity to grow your business kind of in a unique way by partnering with other sign companies to be able to provide the products that your clients need. So tell us a little bit about that.
There's really almost no limit to how much money you can spend setting up your business.
Yes.
There's so many different kinds of signs, so many different ways of manufacture that you could have 15,000, 20,000 square feet under roof and still maybe not be able to do everything. So fortunately, one of the nice things about Sign World is that it is part of a network of sign companies, 350, 400 of them, coast to coast. So I know that no matter what I need to make, no matter whether it's channel letters, a monument sign,
neon,
pretty much
ADA,
anything neon, neon
just,
and ADA. The list goes on and on and on.
There's a lot of them.
There's somebody out there that does it.
Right.
So I have a lot of clients that we just finished one the other day, and the truth is I didn't make anything. I just sold the sign and had somebody else make it, had somebody else install it, and I just sort of GC'd the process along.
Nice.
Which is great for me because I'd much rather sell signs than make signs. I'm happy to do both, but
yeah.
And Sign World's very supportive in that too. I think, it's just like there you can go completely all in. I mean, you talked, Sara, about one of our Sign World owners is over in Fort Worth, and he's got several employees. He's got a lot of things that he does in-house. And at some point we may grow to that. But what's nice is you can hit the ground running any kind of sign because there is such a network of people who can deliver on all those components if you are a qualified and, solid GC, which is what we are. And when you think about somebody builds a building, they don't employ all those plumbers and electricians and, day laborers and all these other people that come together to build a building. They general contracted. And that's sort of what we've leaned into as signs. And it's, I think, working really great for us. We're all about building the relationship and helping the customer be successful. And that's really the fun part of selling signs for me anyway. And I think for you too.
I agree.
Well, and GCing it, you're providing that level of customer service. And the other thing that I want to mention, because we've talked about it's a good sign, and you just mentioned Sign World, is even though we work in the world of franchising, Sign World is not a franchise. And the other reason you were attracted to it was no royalties, no rules. You get to name it, right? It's a good sign. What a cute name. And you both have an entrepreneurial bent, and I think that this was a good fit for you because franchising might have been just a little too rigid, even with an emerging brand where you do get a lot more say-so and flexibility. I think for you two, this was a really good fit because you are entrepreneurial and you can take all the support and training that they offer, and you can pick and choose. You can take it all, take none of it, or you can just take some of it.
Right.
So it's a lot more lenient in that sense. And I think that was a good spot for you guys.
It was. I agree with you.
But highly supportive too. I
Yes.
think
It is very supportive.
Very
where
supportive.
the value is.
Yeah.
I think some people are intimidated by building their own brand, but because of your background, that was something that was more exciting for you.
That is the fun part for us. We're being able to come up with our own brand and, our own unique way of doing things.
So it's a little bit of a hybrid, I would say, from, being independent. But as you pointed out, there's the network of owners, there's the camaraderie, but you get to make a lot of your own decisions and build your own brand.
Yes.
Yep.
And you mentioned that you opened in September, so it was a little slow. Then you said things have picked up now after the first of the year.
People need a lot of signs. I mean, I got, I think, 2 texts on the way in here of people saying, "Hey, now I need that sign." So
that's awesome.
I have a couple of calls to return when we walk out the door. I mean,
Nice.
it's just, these things percolate for a while sometimes too. And it's funny how we've built a lot of business, months ago that's now starting to convert because people are starting to dream about it. A couple of these are people that are starting their own new business, right? So there's a lot that goes into that, and they circle back to us when they're ready. And it's back to that relationship thing. They could call anybody. And I'm sure people get other bids too. We had one person that we worked with recently, you sent us actually, who mentioned that, we weren't the most expensive, we weren't the cheapest, we were kind of middle of the road, but she also just felt confident that we were going to be able to solve her problem and help her with her business. And that made me feel good to hear that from her.
Absolutely.
Well, and unbeknownst to you, I have not unbeknownst to you in the fact that I've placed other Sign World owners, but several here in this area. So I gave her 2 referrals, and she chose you guys. So
well, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So
It's the name.
it's that catchy name.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. And you did mention, you were already networked because of your other business.
Yep. I
And
network all the time.
You have that value of people already, trusting you for your other business. And so, now we have an opportunity to utilize them in a different way, potentially getting the word out there and making sure they know what you do and being patient. I know we all talk a lot about just tenacity as a business owner and kind of not giving up and recognizing that if you're checking all the boxes, that eventually things will pan out if you're doing all the right things to get the word out.
Yeah. And I think that sort of sitting in the middle at the very beginning of this was like, do I brand myself continuing as my consulting and coaching business, or do I go all in on signs? And I kind of wrestled with that back and forth. And I realized the two of them complement each other really well, the way we complement each other in running the sign business, because running a manufacturing company is very different than running a consulting company.
Yeah.
Right. And, I'm using a whole different part of my brain. So this is the most exciting part about running this business for me, is running the business in a different way than I have before. So that's been super exciting. And then I can use what I learn in running a manufacturing company with employees and like a building and cost of goods sold and all that stuff that you don't deal with as a consultant, with people that I'm coaching who are in those kinds of businesses, because now I get it from the inside out rather than it's not theory anymore. Not that it was ever totally theory, but it's definitely more hands-on.
You're living it.
Yeah,
now.
I'm living it every day. So
That's
it's like, I've
awesome.
run into that with my own employees or my own customers. And let me see, let's talk about how we kind of work through this challenge you've got. Because I have a whole new perspective and I love it.
Well, and you said some other interesting things because of struggling a little bit in the beginning, last year,
Right.
you, everyone who starts a business should have a coach.
I firmly believe
You said that.
Yeah,
and then your business is a reflection of you,
absolutely.
but you also have to be good with you and getting rid of some of the head trash that you have and not beating yourself up. The financial part, not tying yourself into that financial piece, right? If you know that you're hardworking, you know that having confidence in yourself and not tying what the business is doing to you and beating yourself up over it. So you guys had to get over a little bit of that and come to some of these conclusions.
At some
You as a
point-
coach had to take it to yourself instead of coaching someone else, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you can only do so much. You can only go to so many networking luncheons. You can only spend so many hours at the office. You can only make so many sales calls. You can only try to refine your pitch. You can only try to, look at your pricing. And at some point, you have to stop taking sole responsibility. Particularly, this is something I had to deal with last year. Like I said, when November and December were very, very slow.
Yeah.
And so I had to look in the situation and just remind myself I'd done everything that I could do. It was out of my hands. I couldn't control every variable.
Yeah.
And all I could do was keep moving forward, which I did, which Gayle did. And so, as we told you, in January, things started picking up. February, they were better. March, they were even better. And now we're actually bringing some money in, which is a lovely change of pace.
So you're already cash flow positive after starting in September, which I think is
Yeah,
very encouraging.
very
And you just
encouraging.
kept, you hit a spot where we talk about often, and it's not uncommon, that they kind of call the grind when you're a few months in.
It's that 6-month grind.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hits right about 6 months.
It
and you're
does.
sort of like, what was I thinking?
And it-
you're
And
kinda
it's
like,
not
wow.
unusual. And for y'all, it was holiday time, which is slow for a lot of businesses. It was an election time, so there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things, I think, slow down and pause during that time.
Yeah, for sure.
So
We actually also find that we're slow during the summer when kids are either home from college or, high school or middle school kids are home, because that's when all the families are taking their vacations.
Right.
So
They're
we have found that
distracted.
for our business. So, just a heads up if it happens again. But it's, there's always those seasonal
Every
cycles.
business has their ebbs and flows.
Yeah,
for
and I don't
sure.
think you appreciate that till you're in it for that full year, and then you can see where the
Yeah.
cycles hit. Right?
Absolutely.
It's like maybe summer will be slow for us too. Let's hope not. But I mean, that could very well happen to us as well. And we haven't hit summer yet, so we don't know.
Yeah,
but we'll
you'll
find
learn.
out. And,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because the sign world support is great, but it's people in all over the U.S. and up in Canada.
Yeah.
And every market's different. So there were some sign world owners who were like, oh yeah, get ready for the holidays. Crickets on the phone. There's nothing going to be happening. And then there were others like, oh, I got these big clients. I got to spend budget by the end of the year, and we are busier than one-arm paper hangers in the middle of December. And I'm like, okay, so I have no way to predict what's going to happen to us. So I think it's slow for us. We've figured that out, so we'll plan
But
for that
that was
for
your
next year.
first
But
year.
It was
Yeah.
our first year. Yeah, exactly.
And people didn't know you yet, and now they do.
It might be different.
We found storm season in Texas is great for sign companies
Yes,
because
it
what
is.
happens to signs when winds at 100 miles an hour come blowing through? They get torn
Okay.
up and broken.
That's why
So we've got a lot of those calls recently.
I try to tell people that if your sign is old and worn, you really should look at replacing it. I have one client that had a sign that was, let's say, aged.
I can see you struggling.
We're trying to come up with a
politely say
polite
that.
word. Yeah, it was pretty aged.
And they did not replace it, even though they really should have. Storm came through a few weeks ago and shattered it.
Oh,
wow.
Then the rain got in, the hail got in,
ooh.
the wind got in and turned the broken pieces of polycarbonate into a Cuisinart inside the thing, and shattered every bulb, ripped out half the wiring. Now their cost is more than double what it was.
What it would have been if
Oh,
they
wow.
replaced it sooner. Yeah.
That's a
Wow.
bummer.
Now
So-
it may have been, it may have been more anyway because the inside of it was probably a mess before the storm, but the storm didn't do it any favors.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sure didn't. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if you guys were to provide a tip, if a prospective business owner happens to be listening to this podcast, what tip might you share regarding business ownership and maybe some of your experiences?
Business ownership in general.
Yeah, just things to keep in perspective. I think you may have shared, already kind of said a little bit about keep doing what you're doing. Follow the processes and systems. Was there anything else that you would want to share with potential business owners?
Just that you're more than your business. Your business is part of your life, but it's not your life. That's how I choose to look at it anyway.
Yeah, and I
Advice.
think it's funny because people joke about Greg and I, we're so different. I mean, if you built us from the ground up right now, you couldn't make us any more different than we are. But yet we make really great business partners because we have a common goal.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I always try to coach people into when I'm talking to folks about leaving corporate America and getting into owning a business, it is about that why. it seems kind of trite and everybody's, it's all about
So
the why, but it
true.
is about the why.
Mhm.
And the why is, what are you trying to get to? I mean, what is your bigger goal and what are your values? And this business, and that's how we try to approach deciding what business. You gave us an abundance of choice. We had 4 wildly different opportunities to look at through FranNet, which was, I thought, pretty amazing. I was like, man, you couldn't have made these any more different if you built them from the ground up. But then the way we made the decision was what aligns to our values and what aligns to where we are going. And it wasn't about what Greg's good at or what I'm good at or what he's passionate about or I'm passionate about. It's like what serves the bigger goal for us as a family and the legacy we want to build.
And everybody's different and that goal's different for everyone. But I always say when I do workshops on this that I truly believe that if your why is not big enough, it will not happen for you.
I would 100% agree with that. Yeah. Because you can keep doing a job, right? And a lot of people, I think, when they get into business initially, I mean, obviously you're trying to replace a paycheck at the outset. I mean, that's what you do when you buy a business. But as you start to evolve as a business owner, so long as you remember that the business is a growth engine and it's not just replacing a job, your income potential becomes fairly limitless, right? You see possibility rather than limitation. But you also can evolve to, like, our next stage, once we mature this business, we may go do another business, or we may just invest in other people's businesses and help them grow. Like your whole perspective changes. It's not about the money anymore. It's about how can I take the knowledge I have and help other people be successful. And you see that a lot in mid to later midlife. people doing that very thing. And franchising is great for that, by the way, because, you can buy into a franchise or support a franchise, but not be in the business daily.
Yes.
There's so many different options in franchising. I think that's a great path for a lot of people that are, looking at it from that perspective, more of that investment and giving back perspective.
So much to give back.
Yes. Thank you so much for that perspective and feedback. So Greg and Gayle, thank y'all so much for joining us. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you and they needed a sign, how would they reach It's a Good Sign?
There's several ways, obviously. The easiest way is through our website at it'sagoodsign.com. You can always email me, Greg at it'sagoodsign.com, or you can just give us a call, which is 469-375-1444.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Again, I am Sara Waskow, and this is my colleague, Roxanne Rapske. We're very active on LinkedIn, so please find us there. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at FranNet of Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma. You can find all of our podcast episodes there, as well as on your favorite podcast platform. So we hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.